Good evening, everyone. Welcome to a new year of City Council meetings. Our first order of business will be the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, now we'll move on to the roll call of members. Madam Clerk, will you call the roll?
Sure. Councilman Kincaid is absent this evening. Councilman Campbell.
Here.
Councilman Jones.
Here.
Councilman Robertson.
Here.
Councilman Copeland.
Here.
Councilman Wheat.
Present.
Councilman Fleming.
Present.
Thank you.
Okay, now we'll move on to the approval from our minutes from our last meeting of last year. Any changes, edits to the minutes? Okay, we entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
Move to approve the minutes.
We have a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
I think it was third. Motion and a second to approve the minutes. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, minutes are approved. Since this is our first City Council meeting of the year, it is traditional that we elect a City Council President pro tem. At this point, any discussions or nominations from the floor for City Council President?
I'll make a motion for Dick Robertson.
We have a motion or a nomination of Dick Robertson for City Council President. Is there a second? Motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Excuse me, I'm sorry, I should have asked for discussion.
You're going to ask if anybody else too.
Yeah, any other discussion or nominations? Okay.
Anyone else interested? Keith?
No.
All right, just checking.
Okay. We have a nomination and a second. All in favor of the selection of Dick Robertson as City Council President, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Aye. All right. Congratulations and condolences, Dick. You are now the City Council President. All right, on to, I know this is our first meeting of the year, but we had a couple resolutions and ordinances that we wanted to finish up from last year. So we had a couple of resolutions from 2018. First item up is Resolution 2018-49, which is the annexation fiscal plan for the Whitehead property. And Ben Bontrager will introduce this.
Good evening, council members. If you recall, this will be the second reading of the annexation ordinance here in a second, but first we have to go through the annexation fiscal plan, which I sent your way back in December at some point, so you had time to look at it. Just a few quick highlights. It's probably easiest to go to the back in the appendix, which is page 13 of the document. It kind of goes through the additional expected expenditures on the city's part, and in this case it would be from street and police department. It's really just additional administration and new streets that would need to be plowed, et cetera. So we're just seeing some incremental increase in costs associated with the city side to provide services to the annexation area. And at the bottom, then you see the summary of the net impact. And I will say here that what they've provided here is just the increase in the levy for the cum cap development fund and not the overall tax levy increase, which would be in addition to what you see here. So I believe, if I recall from the other chart I've seen, by year 3, we're already net positive in terms of tax levy versus cost when you look at overall property taxes, but this provides the cum cap development levy increase. So this gives you a brief overview. Just as a kind of reminder, we're looking at a piece of property on the northwest part of the community. I believe I have the map here if we need to see it again. It's just north of 250, if we got the overhead. That's at 250 in Witt. It's about 23 acres. There is a development that is going to be proposed on this property that will be coming before the council probably sometime in the next 2 to 3 months. It'll be a single family age targeted project, which essentially means that it will be all the maintenance is provided as part of the homeowners association fees that you pay out here. So you get all your yard and everything on the exterior maintained for you, in addition to the common areas. So that's coming up here in the next couple of months, but got to get through the annexation first. Just one final piece again to remember here. We can't have the annexation become effective during the year 2019, the year before census. So this annexation won't be officially effective until January 1, 2020. We are working on, I know Mr. Shine's working on with the county an agreement that will give us planning jurisdiction in the meantime so we can get the project moving. But the actual annexation won't be effective until first of next year. But in terms of the fiscal plan, I'd be happy to answer any questions if you had any.
Ben, also this is 100% voluntary annexation.
100% voluntary.
Yep. Any questions, discussion from council for Ben?
How many units did you say they're looking at?
Right now, tentatively, it's just a little over 100. I think it's like 110-ish or something like that. They're smaller lots. Again, it's for folks that don't like taking care of yards. So it's all that's what's being proposed right now. But I just seen an early conceptual plan just in the last week, so it might change.
Okay. Any other questions concerning their fiscal plan?
I do have a question.
Good, Ben.
So let's say we get through this process, annexation doesn't take place until January 1. Can they withdraw the request for annexation before that time?
I'm sorry, say that again?
Can they withdraw the request for annexation before January 1st? Let's say that there's something they don't like we're doing, they're like, no, let's not do this anymore.
Yeah, right now, there isn't anybody necessarily that could withdraw. I guess the property owner could, but I know they're under contract to sell, so I'm not sure why they would.
Just a question.
It's just, it creates an effective date, so it's still an active and a valid annexation. It just has a different effective date due to the state statute on that, so I don't think they could withdraw.
I think theoretically they could, but there's a time period for it, same as any other annexation where they could contest the annexation, so.
Yeah, they'd have to contest themselves on that, so, yeah.
Great question.
Is it farmland now? Is that what it is? Or?
It is, it's farmland now.
And how many acres are you looking at?
I think it's about 23 or 24 acres, if I'm not mistaken.
Any further questions from Ben? Any public comment concerning Resolution 2018-49? Okay. I'll have Rob read the resolution.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. This resolution establishes, as Mr. Bontrager indicated, a fiscal plan for the annexation of certain territory that's described in Exhibits A and B. This council is required to adopt the fiscal plan prior to the passage of an annexation ordinance. So be it resolved that this council in the meeting would approve this fiscal plan that's attached here to as Exhibit C.
Okay. The resolution has been read on first reading. At this time would entertain a motion concerning Resolution 2018-49.
I'll make a motion, we approve Resolution 2018 is it 49?
Yeah, 49. Correct.
Okay. The fiscal plan for the Whitehead property.
Okay. We have a motion to adopt Resolution 2018-49. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay. Resolution 2018-49 passes unanimously. All right. In relation to that, we have Ordinance 2018-23, which is the council consideration of Whitehead property, which is at Witt Road and 250 North, the one Ben talked about earlier, annexation into the city of Lebanon, and this ordinance is on second reading. And this, again, all relates to what Ben just talked about in the previous presentation, so let's have Rob read this ordinance on second reading.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. Ordinance 2018-23 again states that 100% of the owners for the parcels on Exhibits A and B, the annexation area, filed a voluntary petition with the council. The Plan Commission held a public hearing at their regularly scheduled meeting on November 19th, 2018, and forwarded docket 18-57 to this council with a favorable recommendation 7-0 to assign single-family residential zoning classification to the annexation area. This council conducted a public hearing on December 10th, 2018, as required by law, and this council just adopted the fiscal plan for the annexation in accordance with Indiana Code. This council would find that the annexation area, generally located at Witt Road and 250, is hereby declared annexed to and declared to be part of the city of Lebanon, and it will include contiguous public highways and rights-of-ways, and it's assigned Council District 3 and shall become a part thereof as soon as it can by law. And again, it would be assigned the single-family residential SF1 zoning classification.
Okay. The ordinance has been read on second reading. Further discussion concerning this ordinance? Okay. Would entertain a motion on Ordinance 2018-23.
I move we approve Ordinance 2018-23.
We have a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. I think it's Morris. Motion and a second on Ordinance 2018-24. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, that ordinance passes unanimously. Thank you, council. Next up is ordinance 2018-24, which is the authorization of issuing economic development revenue bonds, series 2019, Patterson Street redevelopment project. And this ordinance is also on second reading. We have Julie.
I think Ben.
Oh, Ben's going to introduce this one as well.
I'll just give you a quick overview again. This is, again, a project that's been before you a couple times before. This is another step in the process to issue the economic development revenue bonds for the project on Patterson Street. Just for a quick reminder, this is the redevelopment of the site there right on Patterson Street, just a little bit north of Maine. They're in the process of tearing the old industrial building out there down. I think they're probably, we'll say about 30 or 40% done with the demolition. And the intent there is to get that, both the building demolished and then all the environmental issues in the soils cleaned up, which I think includes the removal of several feet of soil just to get rid of all the environmental issues in the soil. And then redeveloping that site because of the environmental restrictions. It really can only be an industrial site. It really can't be anything much more than that because of that. But because of the significant cost to prepare the site for a new construction, they are looking for assistance from the city. And essentially what this is they are buying their own bonds, so they are accepting all risk as it relates to this, and then they will just get reimbursed over time from the TIF increment created on the site. So there's no additional dollars that are going to this project other than what the site itself creates. So this in here will just be the issuance of those economic development revenue bonds, which they will then be purchasing, and then they get reimbursed over time from the tax increment.
And also been questioned this is also includes the increment of what, I mean, the building assesses for something already, correct?
It does, although it's been significantly reduced, I think a couple of years ago. Essentially the building's been mothballed, so it really didn't pay much. So I think the existing tax is a few $100,000, and it was over $1 million before it was in active use. So there is some existing assessed value on that property, but it's not terribly significant right now.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from council? Okay. Any public comment? Okay. At this time, I would entertain a motion concerning ordinance 2018. Oh, sorry, let's have Rob read it. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you, Mayor, Council. Ordinance 2018-24 is seeking the authorization of the Patterson Street project bonds. And the Lebanon Redevelopment Commission has previously created the Patterson Street Economic Development Area. The developer, Patterson Street Partners, LLC, has advised the Lebanon Economic Development Commission and the city that it proposes the city issue these taxable economic development revenue bonds in an amount not to exceed $1,250,000. And again, as Mr. Bontrager indicated, it's relating to the construction of approximately 72,000 square foot speculative industrial building located at 320 North Patterson Street. And the principal and interest of the bonds shall be payable solely from the incremental real property taxes that are generated and collected in the allocation area. On December 5th, 2018, the Commission conducted a public hearing in accordance with Indiana law, and this council would find and determine that the project involves an economic development facility as defined by Indiana law. It will create employment opportunities and diversification of economic development to the city, and it will promote economic stability and development and welfare within the city. The proposed financing of all or a portion of the project of certain costs related to the issuance of the bonds in one or more series under the Act in the form of such financing was approved by the Commission. And once again, the issuance of the bonds are payable solely from the revenues and receipt derived from the financing documents.
Yep. Thank you, Rob. Now that we've heard the ordinance on second reading, any further questions, discussion? Okay, would entertain a motion concerning ordinance 2018-24.
I move to approve ordinance 2018-24.
We have a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, that ordinance passes unanimously. Thank you, council. That concludes what I have for old business. Any other old business come before the council? Okay, we'll move on to new business then. Next up is resolution 2018-45, which is a Hendricks Real real property tax abatement, and we have Molly Whitehead from the Boone County EDC to talk about this one.
Good evening, everyone. Molly Whitehead, Boone EDC. This is for a speculative tax abatement on a spec building. This is the second building that Hendricks Commercial Properties has proposed to construct on that approximate 18-acre parcel that sits just outside of the Lebanon Business Park on 39. If you recall, last May, you approved a spec abatement on a smaller size building. It was approximately 100,000 square feet. So what that building is anticipated at. We did have to annex about 1 acre into the city, which is why we're coming back to you today for that second building to go on that parcel. This particular building, they're anticipating it to be around 170,000 square feet, so a little bit larger, still well within reason of the type of leads that we receive, the types of companies that we hope to attract here. One of the great things about Hendricks is that they are willing to subdivide those spaces, and so they can fit smaller size buildings or requests that we have, which we really appreciate that they listen to our feedback with that. What I'm recommending you consider is the same incentive package that was granted for that first spec of building. That's a non-traditional 10-year tax abatement. First 5 years at 75%, year 6 at 50%, year 7 and 8 at 25%, and years 9 and 10 at 10%. That's a little over 50%, or equates to about 50% incentive. I'm estimating around $520,000, assuming an assessed value of $5 million, and that would be the benefit to the company. And I'm estimating around $535,000 in benefit to the city of Lebanon over that 10-year period. Of course, that does not account for any users that would go into the facility, the personal property, and the wages of those jobs that would potentially fill that building.
Molly, I think it's probably fair to remind everyone of what percentage of the leads we get are asking for less than 50,000 square feet.
Of those that request a building, which the majority of our leads request an already existing building, of those particular leads, over 80% of those want a building under 250,000 square feet. Of that, you're probably, I want to say, between 40 and 50%, maybe even a little higher than that, request a building under 50. So that is by far the greatest need that we have. We don't have those sorts of spaces here in Lebanon. The other spec building that Hendricks has proposed, that even though it's 100,000 square feet, they're willing to go down to as low as 40,000 square feet. Aside from that, I've got nothing else, which means even though we have had great success in Lebanon, and especially in 2018, it does limit the types of uses that I can submit for.
But this also, having smaller spaces, helps us get maybe some of those smaller companies that then succeed and then could grow and become bigger tenants, correct?
Yeah, generally speaking, the leads that we receive, especially those that want already existing space, are typically manufacturers. They are typically paying higher than average wages. They're typically fitting one of those categories within manufacturing that we look at: auto, ag, food, plastics, or life science companies. So that's generally what we see. It's not to say a logistics company may not go in this facility, or it may, but generally speaking, the smaller size of the facility, the greater likelihood there is to bring a manufacturer, an IT user, an office sort of space, whereas the larger you go, especially given the floor thickness and the way they construct the buildings, the larger they go, typically it's for logistics and distribution.
Okay, thank you, Molly. Any questions for Molly from council? Nope. Okay. I'll have Rob then read the resolution on first reading.
Thank you, Mayor. Resolution 2018-45 regards certain real property tax abatement for Hendricks Commercial Properties. This council adopted its resolution 2018-43, the declaratory resolution, on October 29th, 2018, which comprises approximately 17 acres that are described in Exhibits A and B. This council, after following the applicable procedures of the Act, took final action adopting Resolution 2018-44, the confirmatory resolution, on November 13th, 2018. Hendricks Commercial Properties, the applicant has filed with this council its Statement of Benefits, Real Estate Improvements, SB1, that was circulated in final earlier, but will be attached as Exhibit C. And this council has reviewed the SB1 that has been submitted, and it makes the following findings. The estimate of $8,547,403. The cost of the improvements to be constructed is reasonable for projects of this nature. The estimate of hiring 75 new individuals can reasonably be expected to result from this project. The estimate of $3,014,700 as the aggregate annual salaries of those individuals will be employed can reasonably be expected to result from this project. And the totality of the benefits are sufficient to justify the granting of the real property tax abatement. The SB1, as submitted, is approved, and as Ms. Whitehead indicated, the tax abatement would be years 1 through 5 at 75%, year 6, 50%, year 7 and 8, 25%, and years 9 and 10 at 10%. And it'll be in full force and effect upon its adoption.
Okay, thank you, Rob. Any further discussion, questions from council? Okay, well, at this time then we'll entertain a motion concerning Resolution 2018-45.
So moved.
Motion to approve on Resolution 2018-45.
45.
We have motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay. That resolution passed unanimously. Thank you, council. And thank you, Molly, for coming and starting off the new year on a good foot. All right, next up is Ordinance 2019-01, which is an ordinance authorizing the issuance of waterworks revenue bond to pay the cost of certain additions, extensions, and improvements to the municipal water systems. I believe we have Julie and Scott from Umball to explain this. Excuse me, Julie's from Krieg Duval, but.
Good evening, Council, Mayor. Scott Miller with Umball. Also here tonight, as you heard, is Julie Bowling with Krieg Duval Bond Counsel to the city, and then Ed Basquil, General Manager of Utilities. The ordinance before you now really continues the work that the Council took up last April regarding the utility rates and charges for the water utility. At that point, you adopted a multi-phase increase to fund improvements to the water utility, and this is the next step of that. This ordinance authorizes a multiple series of bond issues to fund those improvements. The amount authorized is up to $14,700,000, and that will be broken out into different chunks as those projects become ready. The first one is imminent. It is a $3,360,000 bond issue through the state revolving fund that will take care of improvements, the phase 2 improvements on Indianapolis Avenue, and then also electric system upgrades and some water line looping out at the well field. And that'll be the first phase, and has a very tight construction time frame associated with it. Both of the projects will be done by August 15th of this year. So as I said, this ordinance authorizes this first step, and then the subsequent steps as they're ready from an engineering perspective.
Okay. Any questions for Scott from council? And Rob, there's something you wanted to mention about the ordinance that we wanted to clarify for council as well too, that it's.
Well, I think there were some discussions earlier in a call and Scott, you may be able to elaborate, but there is a maximum in here, but as Mr. Miller indicated, the first phase of this is imminent. So what this would do would be authorizing a maximum, and Julie, you can speak to this too, but amount of $14,700,000, but it would essentially, as I understand, it's going to be phased in increments. And this ordinance and again, this is only a first reading, but would authorize the mayor to act on behalf of the city for other phases down the road as far as bond financing requests. Is that accurate, Julie?
Correct. Good evening. Julie Bowling with Krieg DeVault. We're acting as bond counsel in connection with this bond transaction. And as Scott indicated, it does authorize up to, $14,700,000 over the term of the bonds, but they would be issued in multiple phases. And this first phase that we are looking to sell to the SRF is in the amount of the $3,360,000. And so we would go through that entire process issuing those bonds and only issue later phases as they are ready to be done. But this does give the authority to move forward with additional phases as they are ready.
And all those phases are based on our capital improvement plan for our water system. So, and also if those engineer's estimates come in higher, right, we always can either shift projects around and have some flexibility with that too. So just wanted to make sure that point was clear to council as well. So we're not issuing it all tonight, but it's an up to that number. So
now, didn't you, excuse me, Rob, didn't you say that also authorized the mayor to go ahead and approve those, the next phase, right?
Yeah, and again, Julie, correct me if I'm wrong, but the intent here is from a time standpoint and potential long-term cost savings standpoint, just to be able to keep moving as efficiently as possible.
Right.
Well, and we only deal with the issuance cost once versus the doing it out in multiple.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
But all of these projects are what we've talked about before in our capital improvement plan, and we've gone over those with council before as well. So. Any other questions, discussion? Any?
A quick question. You keep saying phases and phases. What's the timetable that you're looking at on something like this?
I believe these are projects all the way out till 2022, I believe. It's really kind of the next 5 years for our water utility is what these, we started this process last year, or actually year before that. We wanted to really streamline of what are the projects that we need to accomplish from a water perspective. So we had the city engineer and the water director for the utilities kind of sat down and we kind of worked all this out of, what are the issues that we see we need to tackle in the next 5 years. So the idea was to kind of put together what that package looked like and then, have that plan of attack to accomplish that. So the projects we came up with were what we felt were the most pressing in the next 5 years.
Okay.
Now, there is a little bit of flexibility. If another priority comes up, we can change and react to that. But this puts us on that path to really address those infrastructure needs over the next 5 years for that.
And just as an FYI, the initial phase, although we're waiting on SRF to give us a final transaction timeline, we would be looking at pre-closing that the first week of February and actually funding that sometime February 13th through the 15th.
Okay.
One other additional thing too, this isn't a blank slate because any contracts for future projects would have to go through the Utility Service Board as well. So it's not like you have an open checkbook to go and do these things.
Right.
There's additional oversight.
Yep.
Thank you.
Any public comment concerning this ordinance? Okay. Rob, do you want to go ahead and read ordinance 2019-01 on first reading, please?
Yes, thank you, Mayor, Council. Ordinance 2019-01 again authorizes the issuance of waterworks revenue bonds in one or more series, again, for the purpose of providing funds for costs of certain additions, extensions, and improvements to the municipal waterworks of the city. And as summarized, this ordinance would be in an amount not to exceed $14,700,000. This ordinance is about 50 pages long, and I know with several attachments to it. So I will refrain.
I think you ought to read the whole thing.
Right. There are several the exhibits on there as well, but in essence, to the extent you have any questions, we're happy to go through it, but I think in the interest of time, rather than go through it line by line, effectively, Mr. Miller and Ms. Bowling summarized the purpose of this ordinance.
Okay. Thank you, Rob. So ordinance 2819-01 has been read on first reading. Any further comment, discussion before we move on? Okay, thank you, Council. We'll address that ordinance on second reading at our next meeting, which will be January 28th. So I have item C here, Resolution 2019-01, appointment of Utility General Manager Ed Basquill as a Commissioner to the Indiana Municipal Power Agency. This is part of our, as being a member of IMPA, we appoint our General Manager to serve on that board. Unfortunately, there was some miscommunication. We thought the utilities were sending out the resolution. The utilities thought we were sending out the resolution. So in fairness, you guys have not seen the resolution, so we'll handle that at our next meeting. But just want to make you aware that that is coming up. Also, for other ordinances coming up, we also are working on an ordinance concerning the parking restrictions and requirements and specifications within the city. So we'll address that at our next meeting for first reading as well. City Engineer Krulik has been working on that ordinance and share that with you. So if you have any feedback, please share that with us. So that concludes what I have for new business from my perspective. Is there anything from the council? Okay, then I would move on to the claims and would entertain a motion.
I move we pay the claims.
We have a motion to pay the claims. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, claims are approved. And any announcements or discussion from council?
I didn't know if you wanted to, a lot of construction going on around Lebanon. We talked about it earlier. I didn't know if maybe you wanted to enlighten some of the viewers tonight about what's going on.
Yeah, I feel like I get asked constantly. So the development on 39 South by the Speedway and the Wendy's, that is a new medical office building for American Health Network. Dr. Parks is moving his offices into a new building there. The old Just Right or Famosa Gardens, John said, that has been demoed and then is being a Taco John's is being constructed. That was kind of talked about. The Culver's plan for the old Bob Evans is still moving forward. The design team there is trying to determine whether or not they can renovate the current existing building or if they'll have to start over from new. That will still have to go through planning process. When I spoke to the owner, his plan for that is May or June on that building. We'll see how fast they can build that. And then also out on the interstate on 32, the old Shoemate buildings, those are coming down. That will be there's plans for outlots for restaurants, a strip center, a hotel, and then also another medical office building that doesn't have a owner yet, but that's what's being proposed there as well. So a lot of I think someone's asked if there was a Groupon on demolitions are us. No, that's just a lot of development happening, and we have a lot of sites that have buildings that are trying to be repurposed into something else. So a lot of great projects happening around the city and a lot of construction. So just please be aware as you're driving around. So,
Thank you.
very good. Any other announcements from council? Okay, and then at this time I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So much.
We have a motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? All right, we are adjourned. Thanks for watching.